G'day everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. Today we're going to be talking about and demonstrating the newest release from Perspectium, which is the Dubnium release. My name is Craig McDonough. I'll be your host for the webinar, and I'm joined by Paul Wynn and Joe Antonaccia, who will both be diving into the technical detail of the release and demonstrating some of the new functionality that we talk about to you. Welcome, Paul and Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, today.
So you may recall we only recently started doing these webinars, and so I wanted to just give you a little bit of background for sort of the reasons for why we did them in the first place. First of all, you told us that you wanted to learn more about each release, so we heard you, and we have been conducting one of these webinars for every release. We'd definitely encourage you to ask questions during the session today. If you have if anything's unclear to you, or if you want any more information, please jump in and use the question panel in GoToWebinar there to ask any questions that you might have as we go through the content today. And we will do our best to get to those questions during the webinar today. The session is being recorded too, and we'll be sending you a link to the recording after the webinar. If you wanted to forward that on to any of your colleagues who might have missed it, or if you wanted to go back and revisit a particular portion of the webinar that was of great interest to you, then you'll be able to do that as well. So that will be sent to you probably within 24 to 48 hours of us finishing the webinar today. You may also recall that we changed our release naming scheme to make it easier for people to remember which release they're on. And this one is called Dubnium. So the obvious question is, well, what actually is Dubnium? It's an element, just like all of our other releases. It was actually named after a town in the Soviet Union. It does not occur naturally. Only a few atoms of it have ever been produced, and the most stable one had a half-life of 28 hours. It is also the favorite element of DJs, I think. And most importantly, it is the latest release from Perspectium. So let's get into it and take a look at the themes for this release, so you can get an idea of what we're going to be talking about today. You'll see on the screen here the four primary themes are around a new piece of functionality called data guarantee. We'll be talking about nucleus improvements, a brand new MSP gateway, and some new agent support as well. So that's they're the big themes for the release. You would have seen those in the invitation, and we're going to dive into each one of those, plus a couple of other things as we go through the webinar today. But let's start off by taking a look at the first of these themes, which is, of course, data guarantee. Now, the new data guarantee feature will improve the reliability of messages leaving ServiceNow and going to database subscribers. This is going to include better visibility to determine which messages are errors and to provide notifications as well as troubleshoot and help recover from errors. For any customers moving millions of transactions per day, this is going to be an invaluable piece of functionality. Let's dive in for just a little bit more detail. Some of the key functionality that you'll see in Data Guarantee includes the implementation of record tracking for records received and processed by the subscriber. And so the database subscriber will actually share back acknowledgement of records received and processed. Secondly, we're going to improve the visibility of error records in the publishing ServiceNow instance. So the instance will periodically check to see if records shared have received or not received acknowledgement. And then for acknowledgements not received, as well as those returned as errors, we'll display those so that users can view and send email notification as well, just to make sure you see it. Thirdly, we'll be providing mechanisms for users to recover from errors. So you get to choose from a list of error records and select either to reshare to share the records out again, or we'll be providing a background process that you can run to automatically share out any error records that didn't receive an acknowledgement. And then finally, we'll be providing troubleshooting mechanisms. That's an option that's going to list out all the business rules that will execute before a dynamic share business rule, which will help you troubleshoot which rules might have prevented a dynamic share from running. And you'll even be able to test from within the dynamic share to test to validate if a record will be shared. Paul, I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder there. Anything you wanted to add to the data guarantee?
I think the main thing that we're trying to do here is, to help provide that visibility for customers. I mean, as Craig mentioned, a lot of our customers are doing millions of records from ServiceNow to the database, and it's hard for them to kind of determine when a record errs and which one it is and which one which one they want to kind of reprocess that. So if you have millions of records sent a day, and then there's 10 errors, which those 10 records are errors. So this is what we're going to help you with. We're leveraging a lot of the ServiceNow receipt capabilities that we built in previously for ServiceNow to ServiceNow. To those who have done some of those integrations using our common document formats are familiar with that. We're kind of leveraging that, extending that for the ServiceNow the database agent scenario.
All right, fantastic. I tell you what, do you want to show us a little bit of the data guarantee and show us sort of what it looks like?
Let's do it.
All righty.
So just to give people an idea, the functionality is baked into the application. So bulk shares and dynamic shares already automatically do it. You don't have to actually do anything unique with it or add any extra functionality on top of it. But what happens is that by default, our improvements to our agent will go ahead and send acknowledgments back, as Craig mentioned before. What we have now is a new view in ServiceNow. It's called Receipts. You see it right here underneath the replicator section. And when you look at the receipts, it actually would tell you, the records that were sent out, relates the receipt to the particular record. In this case, I did a bulk share of some incidents, INC 0012157 and so forth. And you can see that there's a status of it. It shows you if the receipt has been received or not, if we've actually, received an acknowledgement back, or if there's an error, because the fact that the replicator agent, the database agent sent back an error to ServiceNow saying that I couldn't process this record. So you see that there's an error, you see what the records are. Normally here, you kind of look at those records, also look at the agent, see what's going on, see what caused the issue. Once you fix it, for example, if it's a SQL exception, something with your database that you need to fix, you go ahead and fix it. Then you can go ahead and choose those records. In this case, I'm going to choose these 4 error records. Choose the reshare option at the bottom, and then this will actually reshare out those records again. So that now, now that you fixed the issue in your agent, you can kind of share out the data, get it processed properly this time. So it's kind of a lot of what our customers already kind of do themselves manually. We want to kind of automate this process, make it easier for you, so you don't have to do this manually. You can do it as part of our solution.
Yeah, I could see how like some customers that are moving like literally tens of millions of transactions a day, to do this manually would probably be a lot of work.
Right, and this is where a lot of our, as Craig mentioned, a lot of customers, you guys drive our features enhancements, and this was driven a lot by customers. The fact that we got a lot of feedback from you and use this to kind of build this feature for Dubnium.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you, Paul. I'm going to take back the presentation here and give you and we'll sort of continue on taking a look at the next group of features that we're going to talk about, which are specifically focused on Nucleus. You might recall we introduced Nucleus back in our Carbon release, and just as a bit of a refresher, I wanted to just make sure that everyone remembered what Nucleus was. So as a quick refresher, Nucleus is a new approach to integrations that will dramatically increase the type of integrations that we can help you with. As you know, Perspectium allows you to connect ServiceNow or Salesforce to a range of different business applications, databases, ITSM tools, service providers, frameworks, and other third parties. But with Nucleus, we're going to increase the use cases for Perspectium by allowing you to connect any of those supported endpoints to any other supported endpoint. And we'll be doing so via a new interface, which we're going to take another look at in just a second. The thing about Nucleus is that it's a whole new approach to integration, and we've accompanied it with a whole new approach to the user interface. So now people that don't use ServiceNow or Salesforce can still have Perspectium-powered integrations. But don't worry, if you've been using Perspectium for a while and you're comfortable with the interface that you've been using, you don't have to change. This is additional functionality that has been built on top of the Perspectium that you already know and love. Now, so let's, with that sort of background in mind, let's take a look at what's new with Nucleus. There are a few different things here, including the ability to configure triggers from within the user interface and the ability to load default mappings. Now, while these may not sound new to you if you're already using Replicator, this new functionality has not been available in Nucleus until now. And so in addition to that, customers can now configure their own mappings in Nucleus, whereas before it was mainly a tool that our own professional services team used in setting up integrations. So Paul, can I throw back to you for a quick demonstration of Nucleus and of some of that new functionality?
Yep, let me go ahead and show that. So, based on our last webinar for Carbon, just kind of go through the process. The UI is, looks similar to when we first released Nucleus before. And I'll show you some of the new changes. We go through and, as Craig mentioned, with creating a new process, we will go ahead and choose which process we want to integrate. So in this case, I'm going to start off by saying that I want to integrate ServiceNow. So if I create ServiceNow as a new endpoint, we're going to go ahead and, one new feature we have is the ability to actually test authentication. So that way, when you set up your new endpoint, you put the credentials in, you want to make sure it works. You can test authentication, verifies that this is actually the right URL, right username, right password. That's a new feature that we had previously. Previously, it was kind of assumed that you would actually test it, and once you got error messages in the logs or in our logs or your logs, then you would actually kind of go from there. But now, we kind of make it more self-service that way. Then the next screen, and this is also another new feature, the fact that we're going to provide default mappings for you. This new option, you use default mappings, are kind of, the mappings that we've seen kind of been used over and over again by customers for this type of integration. In this case, we kind of load it for you, gives you a starting point to go ahead and change it as you need it. These are the kind of the fields that we kind of had by default. Go through and continue. Repeat kind of the same process for the inbound, outbound. For those who have done integration with us, you kind of are aware of how we translate everything to our common document formats. And this is kind of doing this transformation back and forth between that. Again, using the default mappings that we provide for you. And then you go into the next page, we talk about the triggers. Now you can actually control the triggers based on what fields should cause this record to go out to ServiceNow. I'm doing a ServiceNow integration. So in this case, say for example, I want the priority to be equal to high. So that would cause this to trigger and send out to ServiceNow. And we set this up, and then we're good to go there. And from there, we can just go ahead and add more endpoints that we want to configure as part of this integration. So for first part, I configure what causes this integration for incident to send out records to ServiceNow. I could go ahead and add another ServiceNow instance. I could add Jira, I could add Remedy, and so forth. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the little enhancements we continue to do in Nucleus, and we'll continue. That this is a living, breathing product, just like all our other solutions. So we'll continue to add enhancements based on feedback from customers, feedback from our own internal team, and continue to make this the great solution that we offer for all our other things.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, this is going to allow people that maybe aren't using ServiceNow or Salesforce to take advantage of Perspectium integration, and or even people that are using ServiceNow could still use this as an option if for example, they didn't want to use their own ServiceNow instance to do their configuration. So that's definitely an option. So that's great. Thanks, Paul. We will come back to you in just a sec, but before we do, I need to step onto our next piece of functionality, which is centered around some brand new functionality that we created for our service provider customers, and it's called the MSP Gateway. The new MSP Gateway provides a single pane of glass that allows service providers to configure customers in one place rather than needing to hop around the system to different places. In the initial release, we're going to be targeting ServiceNow and Remedy endpoints for incident management and delivering rapid onboarding on new customer endpoint integrations. We will, of course, support domain-separated MSP Gateway instances in this whole this whole thing as well. Joe Antonaccia is the architect behind the MSP gateway. Joe, what can you tell us about how this is going to work?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So as you mentioned, MSPs are, they're having to onboard many customers, right? And we're hearing numbers like, double digits per month as far as integrating endpoints with their customers. So, to do that using the current or the previous technology we had, would require, a lot of manual setup of dynamic shares and queues and all the artifacts that transform maps and things that we use in our integrations. So what we've done is we've come out with a way to manage that through a single page, and you configure integrations by endpoint and by service management process. So you can have a ServiceNow endpoint for incident management, and we'll generate all the related integration artifacts on the MSP side for that. So that includes your dynamic shares, your mappings, et cetera, and we'll have it'll basically one click to generate all of that. And then on the MSP endpoint, there'll be related artifacts that get installed, and then it allows you to quickly get to the MSP gateway instance hooked up to multiple customer endpoints and manage it really from a single pane of glass. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of technical enhancements we had to make to support just that magnitude of endpoints that'll be used by an MSP. So we're putting together a video demonstration of the software, and we'll have that available right around release time.
Great. And as it says on the slide here, additional as we sort of as you continue to develop this, additional service management processes and endpoints will be added in the future.
Yeah, correct. So that's the plan. We come out with initially with incident management for Remedy and ServiceNow, and then we'll be adding things like change management and probably other endpoints that are popular for MSPs, maybe HP Service Manager and things like that.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Well, we look forward to seeing the video.
Okay. Thanks.
That's great. Now, next up, we're going to take a look at the next of the themes for Dubnium. But before we do, we actually did have a question come in from one of our attendees from Europe, who was asking specifically about the data guarantee, whether you're able to see why there is an error with the share of a record.
So we do send the error back. The error message will be sent back, and it actually will show in the receipt.
Okay.
What the error is. So yeah, you'll have the visibility to see what that particular error is.
Okay. Excellent. Great. Keep the questions coming in, by the way. If you do have any questions, just pop them into that question panel, and we will get to those as we go through. All right. So let's take a look at the last of the themes for the Dubnium release, which is around some additional agent support that we've introduced. Specifically in this release, we've now added support for Java 9.10 and for Snowflake as well. Java 9.10 support provides a highly available solution that allows customers to run multiple agents over AMQP while maintaining queue order to support dynamic and bulk shares. And our Snowflake support will allow you to connect with the Snowflake data warehouse, which is definitely making some waves out there in the industry. Paul, anything to add on that?
So with the Java 8 becoming end of life pretty soon, and Java themselves going to a pretty aggressive upgrade policy of upgrading their different versions of Java. Java 9 recently came out. Java 10 should be out next month, I believe, pretty quickly. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of that. I know some customers are pretty aggressive as far as upgrading Java, just because security fixes and everything that goes on nowadays in the world. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of that, support those, and maybe a little bit more cognizant as new releases of Java are out, that we kind of support them as soon as we can. Java 9 actually did present us a little trickiness to it. Actually had some more changes than we expected. It wasn't as a pure upgrade like the way 7 to 8 was. So we've released Dubnium support. Dubnium will have support for Java 9.10. Snowflake is another one. I think for those who use data warehouses, SQL data warehouses, Snowflake is kind of in a way they're kind of like us in a way. They're a data warehouse as a service. They kind of do everything for you, manage everything for you, use everything in the cloud. They're built have been optimized for the cloud. Something a lot of other data warehouses are not.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of taking the other ones have taken the approach of trying to make it work for the cloud, where Snowflake was done from the ground up for the cloud.
Right.
And I think us jumping on board that it is important because we definitely want to say that we support them among the many other data warehouse databases that we support.
Right.
Stay on top of that. Like you said, Craig, it's one of those making waves with new technology. We want to make sure that we stay on top of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, I mean, that's in a nutshell, they're the four themes, the four major themes of the Dubnium release. But there were a few other things that we did as well in this release, and we wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about those. We've added some conditional share enhancements to allow you to share records through a conditional share if certain trigger conditions require that the record be sent through a different table map or target queue. For example, you might use a conditional share if records related to software problems require a unique table map or target queue.
Right. This is again, enhancements from customers, and we've added that feature to be able to choose the choose the target queue, run it on bulk shares. I think that's a key. A lot of customers like to do conditional shares and dynamic shares, but there are ones who do scheduled bulk shares, daily bulk shares. They want to be able to use a conditional share feature on that as well. Mm-hmm. We've had that support. Supporting other options like based on domains, based on company names. I mean, that's been a request out there by several of our customers. So that's all part of this feature, all part of this release. So we'll make sure that we expand the capabilities that we have as it makes sense. In this case, expand to bulk shares, adding some of these extra requirements that customers are looking for, and it definitely made sense.
Yeah, for sure. And just a reminder too about how important it is to let us know if there's any functionality that you want. I mean, as you've heard in this webinar, and as you hear in every one of our webinars, a lot of what we do in the product is driven by your requests, by what we hear back from you. So please, let us know if there's something that the product isn't doing that you want to see, then we would love to help you out. So please let us know what you would like to see happen in the product. Now another improvement in the Dubnium release is the ability to now include referenced field records in a bulk share. So a simple checkbox will just allow you to select whether referenced field records related to the table should also be shared at the same time.
So similar to our dynamic share, another feature that was added, expanded from there, added to the bulk share. Again, based on customer feedback saying that bulk shares could also use this feature, it'd be useful to kind of share this out. What I kind of related to is that there are customers who don't want to do dynamic shares, who don't need real-time data immediately. They rather have it run once a day and share out all data at that time. And before, they were having to do it for each individual table related to that particular record. They were sharing out, for example, the incident record. They had to share out the users, companies, etc. So with this feature now, you can go ahead and just share it all out like the way you do in the dynamic share with that checkbox that Craig mentioned.
Right. We've also introduced the concept of an after subscribe script, which is going to allow you to create a script that will execute right after a record has been subscribed with an insert, update, or delete.
So that's another useful feature. Customers may want to share out data, then after they share out the record, there may be something they want to do, whether they update a different record or they want to actually update this and mark this record as something else happened. That's what we wanted to add this feature, kind of like the way you have before subscribe feature. We want to also have an after subscribe to do some action, almost like cleanup afterwards.
Right. Excellent. And we also added the ability to import and export SIAM mappings too. This feature is going to allow people to map unique data fields as records leave their instance, go through the processing steps of the message broker service, and then arrive at the different SIAM providers. So this essentially will enable the sharing of customized endpoint mappings to and from the common documents.
So just like this actually is a feature that was requested by our customers. For those who actually do their SIAM mappings and modify them through ServiceNow, through the SIAM mapping UI provide, There was always a need where if you wanted to move those mappings to a different instance, for example, you're doing it on your dev instance, you want to move it to QA. I mean, you can always request us to do it and we'll help you out move it there. But some customers like to be able to do it themselves. So this import export feature kind of allows you to do that, take it from one instance to another instance, make it more self-service. So you can do things that you need to versus waiting for us to do it for you.
All right. And last but not least, second last but not least, we also introduced the ability to test custom events in Observer. So you can test things like, if there are 5 unwanted logins for an admin user within a certain period of time, or if there are, say, 10 P1 incidents logged within like a 15-minute time span. That one that's definitely sounds useful. Was that another customer request?
That was another customer request. Actually, we heard a lot of feedback about that one from Knowledge. Talking to a few customers who use Observer there, they mentioned that we provide them the capability to send in custom events, but they're not always sure exactly what it's going to look like to make sure it fires. So this ability allows you to kind of test to see what the message should look like. That way they can make sure they're generating it correctly. Because as many of you who use Observer know, we provide an API capability in Observer, so you can actually generate your own messages, send it from different sources, and then have it tracked in our UI. So customers will unsure, okay, how should this message look like? And this is what this capability provides here.
Right. Great. Excellent. And in addition to all of that, as we do say on the slide there, we also were able to fix about 27 bugs in this release, so continuing our quality initiative. So Paul, I'll tell you what, why don't I hand back over to you? Maybe you can show us a couple of things that we just spoke about.
Sounds good. So first I'll kind of talk about the conditional shares. As we mentioned, on bulk shares now, they have this feature to add a conditional share. Similarly to how it works on a dynamic share, there's a checkbox for a conditional share. You checkmark that option, then a relay list appears at the bottom that allows you to kind of configure that conditional share. And once you go into that conditional share, I have one already kind of set up, but in this particular conditional share, I've specified here that I only want to share records, both when the state is new, but also when the company is Cisco. That's kind of goes with what we talked about before about expanding that feature to add more options to kind of limit the records. It improves performance that way because we're only going to conditionally share out records based on this particular company or domain or condition without having to worry about the fact that we have to go through and execute multiple conditional shares at the same time, or run, in the case of dynamic shares, run a bunch of business rules. That's that way you cater to one business rule, then you kind of optimize it so it doesn't have to run so many performance issues running so many business rules. Just one business rule is executed, it evaluates the different conditions, and whichever conditions meet that conditional share is used. So we can choose companies. We do have the ability to choose multiple domains. So if you click on the domain list, you can actually choose different domains available out there. I only have a few sample example domains on this instance, but the ability is out there, so you can actually choose different domains and have it only filter to share out those records. As Craig mentioned, we can specify the target key. We can specify if we want to use table maps or not. So that's all in there for conditional share. Both bulk and dynamic share support that. So the feature is universal between our two different ways of sharing. So that's the one new feature with conditional share, or that's one highlight of the conditional share feature. The other option, as Craig mentioned, is the reference fields. Include reference fields. It's similar to the one on dynamic shares. It's also an option right here, include reference field records. When you check mark that, there's an option down here to actually add the fields you want. We quickly have the option to add all reference fields. So you add all that, it actually will add every single reference field on the target table. In this case, I'm targeting the incident table. So then we'll have a reference field for each of the different ones. Didn't take that one, but I'll just show you one right now. So in the case of caller, actually it did exist, but it didn't refresh properly for some reason. It tends to happen a lot in demos. But then that's the gist of the idea, is that the reference field. I can show you one that's already in the system just to give you a comparison. You see right here, I chose to share the company field from the incident record. So basically any company that's listed there will also be shared out the core company record. That way you have the full capture of data when you're doing this bulk share. That's that feature. Next feature I wanted to kind of show was the sign mapping. For those who use the time mapping UI, you're able to choose and modify your mappings directly in ServiceNow. You don't have to wait for us to have our implementation team do it, where you can do it yourself. So what we're talking about here is the fact that now we can actually validate the syntax and make sure that JSON is valid. We can then export it. In this case, I'm going to export this JSON file right here of this mapping. Go ahead and I'll open it in Sublime just to kind of modify it here myself. And then if I want to, I can change something in here, save it. If I want to edit outside, I just want to kind of provide this as an example of how this works. And then I can go ahead and re-import that file in. And you can see right away that the description field was changed to what I modified. So, for those who want to do more self-service, we definitely offer both options as part of our solution. If you want to, if you prefer us to help you with the mappings, we can still do that as we've been doing in the past. But if you'd like to do it yourself, this time mapping UI is available. And, this import-export feature, checking the syntax, is all features that we've heard as enhancements and feedback from customers. So we've had that for the Dubnium release. And then finally, last thing I want to kind of demo was Observer. Talking about the alerts, custom events, you create your custom events in Observer, and you can kind of specify, what events should capture to cause alerts, so that you can be notified when issues are happening. High, medium, low alerts. In this case, if I use the mid server example right here, I create a custom event that anytime I send in a event that has a name mid in it, and then the percentage sign is kind of a wild card, it will actually cause me to throw a low alert. So if I want to verify what that looks like, I would kind of hit this play button right here on the right side. It will actually test it for you against our message broker service, kind of tell you what it expects. And then it will actually tell you this is what the message should look like. For those, as I mentioned earlier, that use our API to send in their messages, or do it through our ServiceNow instance, due to your ServiceNow instance, through using our application, this is what the message would look like. We have this document on our wiki, kind of shows you how to go about creating these messages, but this is what it looked like. And then I had just sent one earlier, 2 minutes earlier, just to kind of verify that work from ServiceNow. And as you can see, it created the alerts right here for the issue of this mid event that I created.
Okay. Great. We had a couple of questions come in specifically about some of the stuff we've just been talking about. One was, what's the difference between the conditional share and just using the condition under the filter and enrichment tab on the bulk share record?
It's pretty much the same idea. The reason why you would do a conditional share is the fact that you want to kind of maintain it all in one spot. For a lot of our customers, it's easier to have one bulk share. For example, for this bulk share is for all the incident records. And in there you have different conditions based on going to different companies, different domains, different conditions there. It's almost the same idea of doing it as multiple bulk shares.
Right.
The reason you do that is just more for maintenance and being able to easier see it. But the idea is almost the same thing. If you had one bulk share with 2 conditional shares versus 2 bulk shares, it's pretty much the same idea. It's just a flexibility of doing it either way, whichever way is easier for you.
Gotcha. Okay. And also a question around the referenced field records. So we talked about the fact that is now available in a bulk share. And the question was, does this mean that it only works with the bulk share? But I think you said it
still works
in the dynamic as well.
It is in dynamic share. I mean, the feature works with both features, both of our sharing features.
Right. Okay. Great. Just wanted to clarify that. That's what I thought I heard too. But that's great. Thank you. All right. So let's go back. Thank you for the demo. Let's go back and sort of do a little recap here on the Dubnium release themes that we spoke about. So that we had the data guarantee, we spoke about the improvements to Nucleus, the brand new MSP gateway, and also the improved agent support, along with a few other things as well. But of course, as we keep saying, we could not have done all of this without you, our customers. So thank you very much to each of these customers. These are all customers who directly contributed to the Dubnium release. Your enhancement requests and feedback are what help us make our product even better. So thank you, not just for being our customers, but for also helping us create the best integration mesh for service management that is out there. So how do I get it is the next obvious question. And the answer is right now you don't. So if you can, you'll need to wait. So our official release date for the Dubnium release is August the 23rd. So anytime after August the 23rd, you can contact Perspectium support via the customer portal. You'll see that that link there. Just on you can either go directly to the portal, or if you've forgotten how to get there, you can just go to our website and click through from there. And that is where you will be able to request your upgrade, and you'll be able to move to the Dubnium release. Of course, the other thing you might want to do is talk to other customers about Dubnium and about what you're doing with Perspectium. And so if you're wondering how you can connect with the other people who are using Perspectium, you know, maybe people that have similar integration challenges as you, then the answer to that is you go to Sync. Sync 18. If you haven't been able to tell, we're pretty excited about hosting our first ever user group meeting, and we'd love for you to join us. Sync 18 is taking place at the Kona Kai Resort in San Diego, very close to the airport. It's happening from November 5 through November 7, and it's going to be attended by people just like you from all around the world. You're going to hear presentations from Accenture, from CDW, from Paychex, from Vertiva, from National Grid, from Technologent, and of course from Perspectium, and quite a few more. If you haven't yet registered, just a reminder that early bird pricing ends on August 31. So get in now and you can save $100 per attendee, or even more if you've got more than one person attending from your company. This promises to be a pretty amazing event. It's a chance to meet the whole Perspectium team, be inspired by other Perspectium customers, and even get in some training. On that point, the pre-conference training schedule is now available, and you can check that out from the Sync page on our website. If you just scroll to the bottom there, you'll see a link to the pre-conference training schedule, and also a link to some text you might be able to use if you're going to request permission or request approval to attend the event. So you'll see that on the Sync page, just on our main website. But with all of that, our webinar has come to an end. So as has now become tradition, here's the obligatory Dubnium pun that we've included here. Thanks to Paul and Joe and the whole Perspectium team for your contributions to the webinar today, and for making Dubnium a reality. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar was recorded. We're going to make the recording available to you in the next couple of days. Just keep an eye out for an email from us containing the link. If you have any follow-on questions, please feel free to email us at support@perspectium.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. We'll speak to you again at our next webinar, and hopefully in person at Sync 18 in San Diego on November 5 through 7. Thanks for joining us.